Hello everyone, so today is the next lecture and this time we start with evolutionary algorithms. And so now we will have a set of 3 lectures in a row and we will focus on evolutionary algorithms as a class of methods, algorithms that can deal with continuous or discrete spaces, and they can also deal with non-differentiable or black box objective functions. So in general, we can call these algorithms population-based methods, all right? And so a quick recap on Metropolis Hastings and local search. So on the left, we have the Metropolis Hastings algorithm. And as we see, or we, I hope, remember that we have 3 main steps. And in the first step, we generate a new sample from a proposal distribution. Then we evaluate this new sample and we calculate the acceptance probability. So in other words, if we go from one point to the other, so is it something like better in the sense of the probability distributions or objective function? And then we have select step. And here in the Metropolis Hastings, we sample random value. And if the acceptance probability is larger than this random value between 0 and 1, so then we accept this new candidate point as our new point. And we proceed and we repeat. And on the right, we have the local search algorithm. And again, it consists of 3 steps. Generate. So first we need to generate a solution or solutions in some neighborhood of current best solution. Then we need to evaluate these potential solutions, these candidate points. And as the next step, we just select the best one, right? That is, for instance, better than our current best solution, all right? And now if you look at these 2 algorithms, we see that the Metropolis Hastings, of course, is stochastic in nature, random in nature. So this is stochastic search, right? And the local search is deterministic. So we don't, of course, we have this maybe sampling procedure in generating, but in general, we can specify it as fully deterministic. There is no stochastic, selection or anything like that. Okay, so we can say that actually these 2 algorithms are very, very interesting and very, very similar in structure, right? And so this is also one thing that I would like to highlight, right? Try to think about them as very specific implementations from a larger class of methods, all right? And what is interesting also is that all these methods that we discussed so far in lecture 2 and lecture 3, so we assume that they work with one single solution at a time, right? So in other words, that we have one solution. It could be a point, a long vector or a matrix or any other object, a tree, a graph, whatever. But we just change this one point, we update it, and we just try to follow the direction that gives us the best outcome. So the natural question is that can we do it better by searching through multiple candidate solutions, right? So in other words, that and also as you've probably seen already in your assignments, we need to start multiple times these algorithms, right? We need to start them, repeat them, start again, repeat, and proceed and just look for the best possible solution that we obtained so far. But the natural question is, can we do somehow better? So can we maybe run them in parallel, right? And then maybe we can exchange information between them, right? Or among them. So why? And this is the follow-up question, right? So what if we can actually use this information about the current quality to speed up optimization, right? This would be perfect because, of course, instead of running multiple times, we can maybe run it once, but in parallel, and then get a better solution and faster. And a very good algorithm to start with is the Markov chain Monte Carlo with something which is called the parallel tempering. All right. So what does it mean? It means that we start multiple chains, Markov chains, let's say 3 of them, but with different temperatures. So when we have these 3 plots, let's say that we have on the left a Markov chain with low temperature. So we see that it's getting actually more peaky. So it focuses around one mode. Then we have with temperature 1. So let's say that this is just the standard optimization problem, right? But we have now 2 modes. And then with higher temperature, where these 2 modes are actually almost equiprobable. So then this chain will have a very easy task to jump between these 2 modes. And the idea is that we start these 2 chains, they run in parallel, but at some point we just exchange these points. So one goes from low temperature to higher temperature or vice versa, right? So thanks to that, so if we have a point that is stuck somewhere, it can jump out of it, because suddenly for this particular chain the temperature suddenly changes, and let's say this is from very peaky, it goes to very broad and uniform, and that's why it can go somewhere else. All right. And actually this algorithm is a perfect starting point for evolutionary algorithms. All right, because this is this population-based algorithm. It has a kind of a population of different candidates that go together and they collaborate in some sense. All right. And now the idea behind all population-based methods is to run an algorithm multiple times but in parallel and exchange information about the objective among solutions. All right. And the general scheme is that first, of course, we initialize a population of solutions, we evaluate them, then we generate new solutions, here denoted by big S. Then we evaluate these new solutions, and then, of course, we select a new population from past population and new solutions, all right? And now, again, how we will define these steps, this will lead to different algorithms. Of course, the main question is, I can be very smart now and I can say, well, we generalized everything. But of course, main questions are how to generate, because still this is extremely important, because this will give us the notion of some neighborhood or some like jumping from one mode to the other and so on. So what kind of probability distributions we should consider, and some kind of transformation of candidate solutions to populations. How we can, in other words, mix them so that we can get new candidates. And of course, very important question is how to select, right? So we need to know which points we should select for the next epoch or generation or iteration, so that we can get better results. So we can, of course, focus on deterministic selection mechanisms or stochastic. So for instance, for Markov chain Monte Carlo methods, so here we should consider what kind of probability distributions we require, but also what kind of transformations, because in parallel tempering, so we just change at random, we transform them so from one temperature landscape to the other temperature landscape. And of course, for MCMC, we require stochastic, for instance, selection mechanism. But now, keeping it in mind that we are now in this different regime, that we have multiple points walking, searching, and exchanging information. So from this population-based algorithms, we go to more, I would say, this very specific set of or subset of algorithms called evolutionary algorithms, right? And the main idea is to develop proposals, so the proposal distribution as a transformations of individuals, and select the mechanism inspired by nature, right? So, like survival of the fittest, or that population can grow or decrease, and so on, right? And the transformations that are used in evolutionary algorithms, mainly we can divide them into two groups. So one group is so-called crossover or recombination. So we select two candidate solutions, so-called parents, and now we exchange their information in the sense that, for instance, we cut two vectors in half and we exchange these halves to create a new child, right, from these two parents, new candidate solutions. Or a so-called mutation, which means that we perturb some parts of a solution. So, for instance, we add some small Gaussian noise. Or if we have bits, we just flip one bit at random, right, from 1 to 0, from 0 to 1. But of course, another very important part of it, and I used this term already a couple of times, it's selection mechanism. We can use it either for selecting parents for crossover or combination, or for mutation, that we select which points we want to mutate, or we just, or maybe not or, but also we have this selection mechanism to select new data points, new candidate solutions, right? For the future, for the next population. And another concept is, of course, diversity. So it's exploration versus exploitation. So we want to have this balance between exploring the search space or exploiting good individuals, but also there is this concept of diversity. So it's again taken from nature, natural evolution, that we would like maybe to have these candidate solutions to be diverse, not to converge too quickly to the same search space, right, or region in the search space. And here we have a comparison between biological evolution and artificial evolution. Of course, we can delve maybe into that, and researchers do that, but it is more to give you a feeling that actually these two worlds are completely different. They have some similarities. The motivation is taken from biology, but they are different. So, for instance, the fitness function. So, a fitness function is we can say a quantity that reflects the objective function, but also maybe some other aspects. So in biological evolution, this is a quantity observed after some time. So, for instance, whether some animals they die, they don't adapt properly because it's too warm or something like that. But then in some sense that the best objects they adapt eventually and they can grow or something like that. But in the artificial evolution, this is a quantity that drives selection. So basically, we look into the fitness function and we build everything around it because we want to find this candidates that can give us the best outcome. And so to realize how it goes, so of course from generation to generations we look at this fitness and we select something, while in reality this fitness is maybe available after multiple generations, and then maybe we can see, oh, it's true, this is like that. So I would say that in biological worlds, this objective or fitness function is really a black box. While in artificial evolution, this evolutionary algorithms, this is rather, we always assume that we know the fitness function. Again, selection mechanisms, they rely on environment and other populations. So, of course, when we have some migration of people or animals, the selection is different and it changes. But here in artificial evolution, we have predefined operation. Very often this is randomized, but this is predefined, so we know exactly how to proceed. This is very algorithmic. In biological world, we have a population that is offspring from sexual or asexual reproduction, but it's influenced highly by location, death, birth events, and so on, so on. While in artificial evolution, we have rather that this is an offspring is generated from individuals that are asexual, but still we require maybe 2 or 3 different parents to get a new child, right? And rather size is kept constant. Of course, there is research how to deal with that, but more or less this is widely used algorithms. They keep constant size. And in biology, this genotype-phenotype mapping, this is of course done by biochemical processes, and in artificial evolution we have mathematical mappings, right? So again, this is a little bit different. Of course, you can say that biochemistry, to some extent, we can see it as mathematics, but mathematics implemented by nature. And so maybe it doesn't matter too much, and these aspects are rather similar, but still they differ a bit. And now we will briefly go through concepts, or these actually definitions, maybe what we mean by different words used in evolutionary algorithms, because this field, they have own concepts that sometimes, this is maybe a little bit too much to give another name, but to keep this motivation from biology, so people are used to use these concepts. So a candidate solution, so a real object, is called phenotype or an individual. So here it's I think that maybe a bit different than what we've talked so far is this phenotype, but rather during this course we will stick to a candidate solution or an individual, but sometimes maybe you will hear a phenotype, or you can also look into some books and you will see. Candidate solution, but a representation, so it's a genotype or chromosome. Again, people just refer to an individual. So of course representation could be different. So you can take 2 different people, 2 different designers, and one designer will use, for instance, integers, and the other person will use bits. They both of them, they represent exactly the same, they look at this exactly the same object, but they represent it in a different manner. In optimization, we talk about search space. Here people talk about genotype space, and this is where the transformations work, right? So how the genotype is changed. In optimization or mathematics, we use a dimension. Here we say gene, and when we say about the value at a given dimension, so evolutionary people, they also like to say about allele, but I think it's not so important, right? It's important that we know what we are talking about, and if you at any point you are a little bit confused, so please go back to this slide and check it quickly. Also, very nice review of all these words is given in Gusti's book, Gusti Ivan's book, if I remember correctly, Introduction to Evolutionary Computing. And another extremely important concept is the fitness function, and the fitness function is a function that corresponds to objective function somehow in optimization. However, it could also refer to some very evolutionary specific objectives, like for instance diversity. Again, you can, evolutionary algorithms are quite specific, because you can play actually with different parts of an algorithm to obtain almost the same purpose. So for instance, if we want to have more diverse diverse candidate solutions. So you can, for instance, play with selection mechanism, or you can play with fitness function, and so on. Okay, but fitness function is extremely important. It can be something a bit different than objective function, but it should reflect it. And in general, as a whole, the evolution an evolutionary algorithm could be represented as follows. And if you go back, maybe afterwards, if you go back to the slide with population-based method, you will see that this is basically the same, but evolutionary algorithm is specified, more specific. So we initialize a population, we evaluate it, then we generate new solutions by applying two specific evolutionary operators: mutation and recombination, all right? And we apply them to our current population. That's why we generate new solutions. We evaluate these new solutions, and then in the end, we select new population using our old population and new solutions. Sometimes, of course, you can disregard all the population and so on, but these are specifics. This is, again, a general template, let's say, of an algorithm. And if you write an algorithm, I would highly suggest to just take a look at this scheme and just follow it, all right? And then you just fill in missing parts. So your specific mutation, specific recombination, and so on. And if you look at the taxonomy of algorithms, evolutionary algorithms, so over years, people proposed a lot of different approaches. So we have genetic algorithms, evolutionary strategies, evolutionary programming, differential evolution, genetic programming, but also estimation of distribution algorithms. All right, and to know more or less, we'll go into details in next lecture or in one of next lectures. But to have this very general impression and how to remember these algorithms, to use, for instance, proper, again, names. So I always remember it by search space they work with. So genetic algorithms, they are rather used for discrete search spaces. So when you talk with evolutionary people and you say, I use a genetic algorithm, they say, oh, they think, all right, so they use these discrete spaces. Genetic programming is on graphs and trees. Evolutionary strategies, evolutionary programming in differential evolution, they work with continuous search spaces. The one outlier is this estimation of distribution algorithms. And I also asked Gusti about it, and he said, yeah, so estimation of distribution is one of these methods that it doesn't fit very well to this taxonomy in general, because this is, again, quite generic algorithms, and it can be used in many different situations with continuous discrete search spaces, with graphs, whatever. But also it doesn't fit well to some other groups of algorithms, so that's why it is included in these evolutionary algorithms. And today we will end up our meeting with exactly discussing this algorithm, right? And during next meetings we'll talk about others. And honestly, I really like this approach. I think it's very smart and very neat. And what is the idea? So idea is that we actually add an additional step, all right? You can say that it could be included in this generate step, but I would prefer to consider additional step, and this step is modeling. So we have now modeling, generate, evaluate, and select. And what does it mean? So it means that when we have a population of solutions, right, we evaluate them. So first we fit a distribution to our current population, all right? So in other words, we take this population that we have and we generalize it, all right? So we generalize it by fitting a distribution. Then we generate new solutions by sampling from this distribution, all right? Again, we evaluate new solutions, and we take these new solutions as our new generation. So you see that now in the select step, we don't take into account the previous population. However, of course, you can easily modify it by also maybe taking some best solutions so far. But this is the standard estimation of distribution, all right? What is very interesting from these new solutions, we can again select, of course, not all of them. We can, for instance, generate 1,000 new solutions, but then we can again pick only the best 100 of points, all right? So this step is very important as well, because by selecting less points, we'll go further and further to these regions that are better and better, hopefully, of course. And by now fitting distribution, we can, because we fit distribution, so in some sense we are able now to generate a lot of different points that they were never observed so far. So this is again very interesting point of view. All right. And how it works. So here is a very simple model. So let's say that we have a quadratic function. So top left plot. So the blue line is our quadratic function, is our objective, and at the same time we can say that this is our fitness function. And we just randomly generate these points. We evaluate them. We set the population size to 10, so we have 10 points. And now we fit a Gaussian model, right? Of course, we know that the minimum of the quadratic function is 0, so we know where to go. Now the Gaussian, of course, we need to take this distribution. We need to take this population. We need to calculate the mean value and variance, right? So now, after the modeling step, we now are interested in this orange curve. So this is the distribution, Gaussian distribution. Now we generate new solutions by sampling, and now we look at top right plot. So now you see that they are more concentrated about 0.00, right? Oh, of course, sorry, I forgot about the selection step. Of course, we generate more points, we evaluate them, we select 10 best, and we have new Gaussian distribution, right? Now you see that this is really concentrated on 0. So we, again, generate new points, select 10 best, and we are in bottom left plot. And now you see that, oh wow, these points are getting closer and closer to 0. And in fact, in generation 3, so the fourth generation altogether, we are basically concentrated. We are almost like a delta peak, picked around 0. This is our best solution, all right? So of course, it looks really nice, because you can say, wow, actually it works like heaven. But the problem is that the problem could be with scaling, all right? This could be quite problematic, okay? But in general, I really like this approach, because it combines these ideas of having, in some sense, population of best solutions, but also that we can fit some model inside that could be very useful, all right? And here the pure approach is that we fit a model to search space without looking at fitness function, but we can also think of fitting a joint model that models both points and fitness function. And then of course we can look for the best region of points, and this will bring us to actually the Bayesian optimization that we will talk about during the 10th lecture, if I remember correctly. All right, so what are positive parts and positive points and negative points of estimation of distribution? So pros are definitely that we can generate new points very easily, right? So we just generate it from a distribution that we fit. So we can generate very easily points that have been never seen before. It could have very nice properties like good exploration, because we can generate really diverse populations. So when we look at this Gaussian, so we can even so we can sample from so-called tails, right, from these parts that are further from the mean value. It could handle both discrete and continuous variables. There is no problem with that, except that, of course, maybe some distributions are easier to fit or others not so easy, but of course we can do that. And there's a possibility of incorporating prior knowledge, because we can think of this model as a model that we fit after observing some data, but of course we can also combine it with prior knowledge, so we can use the Bayes rule. So this is very nice. The disadvantage is definitely that it requires an explicit probabilistic model, probably. However, you can also think of using some GANs or whatever here. But rather we would prefer to work with explicit model, like Gaussian or some other distribution. And of course, if we misspecify a model, this could lead to local minima and very slow convergence. So these are these problems. Of course, I also don't mention that fitting the model could be difficult by itself, right? So these are these disadvantages. But in general, this is very nice concept, and it combines these two worlds, I would say, these population-based methods with explicit models, and we can even call this this model that we fit to our population something like a surrogate model. Please remember this term. We'll go back to that when we talk about Bayesian optimization. And this is the end of this lecture. So I would say that please maybe watch it twice, because there are some new concepts, new terms. This is not extremely important to remember all of this, but it's good to remember them, especially if you talk to evolutionary people. They are very sensitive to use proper wording, and also when you read a book or textbook, it's worth to remember all these terms. And in altogether, I think that what I would like you to remember about evolutionary algorithms is that there is this larger class of models, population-based models, and in my opinion, this term is extremely good for this kind of algorithms. Population-based models are used more in statistics. So this is in statistics. This is a very proper word, very proper approach. But of course, if we say population-based methods, so people would rather expect some convergence properties, guarantees, and so on. So for instance, this MCMC with parallel tempering, this is a population-based model that has approach that has very good convergence properties and so on. You can prove something. While in evolutionary algorithms, evolutionary computing, people do not expect some guarantees. So people accept that there are heuristics that they may work or may fail, and so on. Okay, so maybe here is this subtle difference, but in my opinion, if we all talk about population-based methods, I think this is a very good, very descriptive umbrella term for all these kind of methods. All right. And that's it. Thank you very much, and I hope that you enjoyed this lecture. And here is a list of extra reading. I always forget about it, but here it's Gusti, Ivans, and Smith's book, Introduction to Evolutionary Computing. It's very well written textbook, in my opinion. So it's worth to take a look into that. There's also a very nice book from Cruz et al., Computational Intelligence, a methodological introduction. You can also see there some neural networks. However, in my opinion, it's not perfectly written. There is a very nice book from Brabazon, O'Neill, and McCarthy, Natural Computing Algorithms with many different approaches. If you are interested in Markov chain Monte Carlo methods from Radford Neal, this is a technical report, perfectly well written paper, and also Ivan and Smith they wrote a Nature paper in 2015 from evolutionary computation to the evolution of things. So this is, I would say, a condensed version of their book. So if you are a bit, lazy, let's say, so you can maybe look into this paper. However, in my opinion, the book is very well written. It's worth looking to that. Thank you very much.